Freddie Mercury was such a phenomenal singer, songwriter and performer that it's easy to forget what a good piano player he was as well. So today I want to take a look at his piano playing on We Are the Champions. Let's see what we can learn from this. Okay, the time signature is 6/8 and we begin in the key of C minor. There's no intro, so we're straight into the verse, which is 17 bars long. So there's a 1-bar extension to the 16 bars we would normally expect. Let's examine the chord progression first, and then afterwards we'll look at the exact piano part. On the highest level we got 8 bars of C minor, and then 9 bars of E flat major. We see this so often, right? Songs moving harmonically between relative major and minor key pairs. In this case, C minor and E flat major, which share the same key signature. And then, going one level down, in the first 8 bars, he creates movement by alternating between C minor and B flat over C. That's such a common harmonic device, oscillating back and forth between 2 chords, while keeping the bass note the same. That bass note is then called a pedal tone. In the next 4 bars, he applies the same idea to the E flat chord. He alternates between E flat and A flat in the right hand, while keeping the E flat in the bass. In the last 5 bars of the verse, the progression becomes a lot more complex. First, it moves from E flat back down to C minor via a B flat triad in first inversion. That is followed by an F7 chord, which is a secondary dominant chord pointing to B flat, and the next chord is indeed B flat. The next 2 bars contain another example of pedal tone, a consistent bass note with chords changing on top of it. It starts on A flat over B flat, then it goes to B flat minor 7 flat 5, and then to B flat 7. Now, while we can look at this progression as a series of familiar vertical chord structures, A flat over B flat minor 7 flat 5, B flat 7, I think it's more helpful to think of it as a B flat chord with horizontal chromatic embellishment. Check this out. If we start at the end of this little sequence, we got this B flat 7 voicing, right? So there's a technique that we find in jazz a lot, for example, and that is called a chromatic approach, which can be applied to individual notes in a melody or to entire chords. So we could approach this B flat 7 chord by half step from below, for instance. We could take it a step further, literally, and approach it with 2 half steps like this. That's called a double chromatic approach. Now what Freddie is doing here is the same thing, except he keeps the bottom 2 notes the same and only applies the double chromatic approach idea to the top 2 notes. Put both together and we get this. What's also interesting is how this interfaces with the vocals. The backup vocals are singing this line. At the top we have this repeating 2-note motif, and then in the middle there are harmony parts that do exactly what the piano does, namely this. So putting the vocals and the piano together, we get consistency at the top and bottom, and that is contrasted with movement in the middle. If we took out all the chromatic trickery and only played B flat 7, we'd get this. Obviously not as hip. And speaking of hip, after spending 9 bars in the key of E flat major and the last 3 bars decorating a big old B flat 7 chord, one would be forgiven for expecting the next section, which is the chorus, to go to E flat. Instead, we get this. How glorious is that? No wonder they sing this at football matches. But before we go to the glorious chorus, let's look at Freddie's actual piano part in the verse. Okay, so there are simple and predictable comping patterns for 6/8, like this for example. Or this. And then there's Freddie's playing on We Are the Champions, which is way hipper than that. Here's how he expresses the chord progression of C minor to B flat over C in the first 2 bars. Notice that he does play on each beat, but not like this. Instead, he alternates between single notes and 2 and 3 note chords, and between right and left hands. Much more interesting. What's always super instructive is to look at different iterations of the same section of music and observe the similarities and the differences. Of course, this works best with songs that were created before pop music turned into 2-bar beats downloaded from the internet that are then identically looped for 4 minutes straight. Kids these days, eh? So here in the verse, for example, we have this 2-bar phrase, C minor to B flat over C, that repeats 3 times. And then we have E flat to A flat over E flat, and that happens twice. Now, he uses the same 2-bar concept for the entire 12 bars, but never the exact same way twice. He creates the perfect balance of repetition and variation. Check this out. He starts with a little motif, E flat to C. So the third and root of the chord we're on. And he adds the 5th to the first note. So we got a triad broken into 2 notes and 1 note. Then he repeats that but an octave higher for variation. Meanwhile, the left hand plays a low C on the downbeat and then 2 more Cs on beats 3 and 6, where the right hand doesn't play. That creates a bit of call and response between the 2 hands. Notice also that he uses octave displacement in the left hand, just like he does in the right. So that was bar 1. Now let's see how he expresses the same basic idea in bars 3, 5, 7, 9 and 11. Here's bar 3, bar 5, and in bar 7, instead of going up an octave for the repeat, he goes up a third and plays the 5th and 3rd of the chord. Then, as we've seen, the progression moves up to E flat major, but he still uses the same 3rd root motif he introduced in bar 1, just applied to the E flat chord. Here's bar 9 and bar 11. Next, we have the second half of each 2-bar phrase. The chord is B flat over C in the first 8 bars and A flat over E flat in the next 4 bars. Here's what he plays. And again, pay attention to the similarities and the differences. Bar 2, bar 4, bar 6, and bar 8. Then we go to the A flat over E flat in bar 10 and bar 12. Okay, now let me play the first 12 bars of the verse so you can hear everything in context. Alright, we got 5 more bars left in the verse, and there's a dramatic dynamic shift that happens in preparation for the chorus. Freddie starts playing full chords, the drums come in, the guitar switches to a distorted sound, shit gets loud. I guess you could call this a pre-chorus, but to me it still feels more like part of the verse. We already looked at the chord progression, so here's what Freddie plays exactly. Alright, the chorus of We Are the Champions. Excellent choice if you want to belt out a tune cause your football team just won and you want to rub it in the other team's supporter's face. Let's see what's going on musically here. We already heard that surprising C chord at the end of the verse. This sets up a modulation up a whole step for the chorus to the key of F major. This is so effective. Now what will be interesting to find out is how they're gonna get back to the original key after the chorus for the second verse. It can be tricky. Modulating down is much harder than modulating up. Okay, let's check out the chord progression. The chorus is also 17 bars long, like the verse. On paper that's very unusual, but it sounds totally logical when you hear it. We start on F, then A minor, D minor, and then B flat and C7 at half a bar each. So that's the first 4-bar phrase. Then we get F and A minor again, followed by B flat in bar 7 of the chorus. So far, those are all diatonic chords in the key of F, but now we're getting into chromatic territory. The chord in bar 8 is F sharp diminished 7. So what's that doing in the key of F? Well, it's a secondary diminished 7th chord. Say what? Let me explain. Diminished 7th chords usually have the same function as dominant 7th chords, except where dominant 7th chords want to resolve up a perfect 4th, diminished 7th chords want to resolve up a half step. Not always, but usually. You might be familiar with secondary dominants. Those are 5 chords that are put in front of diatonic chords in a given key to create more harmonic complexity. And you can do the same with diminished 7th chords. For example, G minor is the diatonic 2 minor chord in the key of F that we're in. We could just move from the B flat in bar 7 of the chorus directly to G minor. Or we could approach the G minor via a secondary dominant, which would be D or D7 in this case. That's hip. Or we could approach the G minor via a secondary diminished 7th chord, which is F sharp diminished 7. Even hipper. Okay, so in bar 9 we have G minor on beat 1, then he adds the 7th on beat 3, and in bar 10 he plays C7 while keeping the G in the bass. And then he goes back to G minor 7 on beat 4. That's the same 1-4 over pedal tone move that he used in the verse, right? There he played E flat to A flat over E flat and back. And here he does the same thing, except on a minor chord. G minor 7, up a 4th to C7 while keeping G at the bottom, and back to G minor 7. In bar 11 we move to B flat minor 6, that's a modal interchange chord from the parallel key of F minor, and in the next bar that changes to E diminished 7. And that's the same thing that we just saw with F sharp diminished 7. It's a secondary diminished 7th chord, and that sets up the return to the tonic chord F. Check out this beautiful harmonic movement in the last 3 chords. He starts on G minor 7, then just one note moves down a half step, which is the D to D flat, to create the B flat minor 6 chord. And then the F moves down a half step to E to create the E diminished 7 chord. So all together, beautiful. Okay, now we're into the last 5 bars of the chorus. We go from F to E flat add 9 over G, to A flat 6 to B flat to C minor 11. If we just look at the bass movement, that looks like an F minor scale, right? And 3 out of these 5 chords, E flat, A flat and C minor, are diatonic in F minor, not F major. So we see the lines between F major and F minor starting to blur at the end of the chorus. Also, check out the vocal melody in this section. In the first 2 bars he sings A natural, the 3rd of F major on the downbeat. And then he switches to A flat, the 3rd of F minor. So he actually expresses the transition from major to minor really prominently in the vocal melody. Okay, now let's look at what he plays on the piano during the chorus. He starts like this. That's awesome. He plays a cross rhythm against the regular rhythmic feel. The expected accents in 6/8 are on beats 1 and 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But he drops his chords on beats 1, 3 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He also uses octave displacement again, like he did in the verse. On the A minor in bar 2 he does the same thing. Then he switches to the more expected rhythm of hitting beats 1 and 4 for the D minor, and then B flat and C7 in bar 4. Bars 5 and 6 are the same as 1 and 2, except there's no octave displacement on the A minor this time. Then we have B flat, And at the end of that bar, the bass connects stepwise down to the F sharp. That F sharp diminished 7 bar sounds like this. Notice all the jumping around he does with the voicings. He's like, who needs voice leading? It looks kinda sketch on paper, but it works great in this song. Another example of how breaking the rules can serve the music if done right. And Freddie does it right. So let me play the first 8 bars of the chorus. And here's the next 4-bar phrase. Notice the bass outlining a diminished 7th chord in bars 11 and 12. Not something you hear every day in a rock song. In the last 5 bars of the chorus, he switches to continuous 8th notes, comprised of full chords on the downbeats and then mostly single note arpeggios for the rest of the bar. Bar 13 is straight up F major. Bar 14 is interesting. Both Freddie and Brian May on guitar play this chord on the downbeat. It looks like an incomplete G minor 7, right? But the vocal harmonies also sing in E flat. And on top of that, the lead vocal is on a really prominent A, so the entire harmony that we hear is this. That's some seriously hip shit. In the second half of the bar, he plays this little melodic motif, and he plays that in the following 2 bars as well. So here's bar 14, here's bar 15, and in bar 16 he plays a B-flat power chord, just root and 5th. But the missing D is once again in the vocal harmonies, so overall we're hearing a B-flat major triad. And lastly, they finish the chorus with another rich chord, namely this one. C minor 11, and the whole band plays these hits. So here are the last 5 bars of the chorus. Okay, we got one more short section to talk about, and that's a 6-bar interlude after the first chorus, which then takes us back to the verse. Remember how the end of the chorus seemed to transition from F major to F minor? Well, this interlude is now fully in F minor. The right hand alternates between F minor and G minor 7. But each time the G minor 7 chord is paired with a different bass note. The first one has a G in the bass, so that's just G minor 7. On the next one, his left hand actually stays on the F, so we have another little pedal tone situation here. G minor 7 over F. And then the last one has C in the bass, creating a C9 sus4 chord. The piano part uses textural elements from both verse and chorus. Here's the whole interlude. After the interlude, we go back to the verse, and then double chorus and out. And what he plays is very similar to the first verse and chorus. And that's it for today. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.